Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive.
The podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside.
Let's dive in.
What if everything about modern spirituality and authentic freedom isn't just wrong, but is designed to be wrong?
That really is the question hanging over this whole deep dive, isn't it?
It is. And for you listening, we've really traced the rhetorical flow of this, well, powerful modern spiritual system, one that promises total liberation.
And our mission here really is to figure out if this promise, this authentic freedom, is, just clever marketing.
Or if it's actually a label for a meticulously crafted kind of self-insulating prison.
Exactly. We've cracked open the system's own blueprint. We're tracing how its foundational philosophy, its core ideas end up dictating specific behaviors.
And how it manipulates really core human concepts. Things like love, jealousy, power.
Yeah, we're going to show you exactly how complex human dynamics get boiled down, really, reduced to these self-serving rules.
And it starts right at the beginning with the core axioms, the absolute foundation.
So the entire architecture, everything the system builds, it starts with how it defines freedom.
Right. This is the bedrock premise. Everything else relies on it.
And the definition they offer is, well, it's pretty singular, very absolute.
Yeah, it basically says true existence is defined only by living by your own rules, completely free from cultural or societal norms.
Total self-directed sovereignty. That's the goal.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second, because on the surface, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
It's compelling. It taps right into that modern Western ideal, complete autonomy. Who doesn't want freedom from, arbitrary rule?
Exactly. But the fundamental problem, the real trap, is baked right into that premise.
It presupposes, it just assumes, that freedom can be purely individualistic. Like you can achieve it in some kind of psychological and social vacuum.
And that's the fatal flaw right there. It operates in this imaginary isolation.
Completely ignoring the necessary the societal fabric that actually holds us together as humans. It's just not how reality works.
So if you define your freedom as getting rid of all constraints, even the constraints that actually allow for deep connection,
then what you end up with isn't freedom at all. It's actually profound isolation, just dressed up in fancy spiritual language.
Yeah, this hyper-individualism.
Yeah.
It's intellectually, destructive.
Yeah.
And you see other systems, other ways of thinking that stand completely against it.
Oh, absolutely. If we look at counter systems, take feminist care ethics, for example.
Okay.
They argue that genuine freedom, real selfhood, is actually found within what they call the web of relational responsibilities.
So not by destroying connections, but by understanding your role in them.
Precisely. You don't find your authentic self by blowing up the systems of mutual care that sustain you. You find it by mastering your part within those systems.
Right. And you mentioned looking east earlier.
Yes. Eastern thought often provides such a stark contrast to this Western obsession with pure individual liberty, doesn't it?
It really does.
Think about Taoism or Confucianism. They fundamentally oppose this idea of deconstruction as liberation.
They see freedom differently.
Totally differently. They argue freedom is found in harmonious duties, in understanding and fulfilling your social roles, not in tearing them down.
So mastery within the system is liberating, not escaping the system entirely.
Exactly. It liberates you from that internal conflict of always striving against something. So if your definition of freedom needs you to sever every single tie, binding you to community, to tradition,
then you're not pursuing enlightenment, you're pursuing isolation.
And this flawed foundation, this idea of pure individual freedom, it immediately feeds into how the system views relationships, specifically how it pathologizes monogamy.
Yes. This is a critical pivot in their logic, isn't it? Because they have to tear down the common relational standard.
To establish their alternative as the only true path.
Right. So conventional monogamy, it's presented not just as like one choice among many.
No, it's framed as a repressive construct, inherently flawed.
And the system asserts that this construct directly causes things like infidelity and porn use.
Yeah, labeling them not as relationship failures or maybe symptoms of deeper personal issues.
But as necessary escape routes. Like the structure itself forces these behaviors.
It's a clever rhetorical move. It shifts the blame away from the individual and onto the societal norm.
And the whole argument seems to hinge on this. This pseudoscientific belief they push?
Right, the idea of biological boredom.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, the hypothesis is basically that Primarily for the male practitioner in this system, sexual desire just naturally declines in monogamy.
Because of something they call a fraternal switch.
Exactly. The idea is you get used to your partner, they become like family, like a sibling almost, and boom, your biological desire gets deactivated.
It feels like an attempt to put a scientific-sounding gloss on. Well, maybe just simple dissatisfaction. Or the natural drop in novelty that happens in any long-term relationship.
That's exactly what it seems like. But the danger is in the framing. This system pathologizes the very choice of monogamy.
It positions the successful pair bond, something millions of people choose, happily and securely, as an obstacle. Something you have to overcome to be liberated.
It's a classic false dichotomy, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
They present the options as either you're repressed, stuck in this dying, boring cage of monogamy,
Or you're free through their specific methodology of, well, expansion, having more partners.
So our analysis, I mean, this just screams hasty generalization, right?
Massively. It completely ignores the huge spectrum of successful pair bonding we see everywhere.
And vast amounts of anthropological data showing humans are incredibly flexible in sexual arrangements. But pair bonding is still a dominant successful mode.
And crucially, as you touched on, it directly clashes with decades of research in attachment theory.
Right, which views emotional exclusivity not as repression at all.
But as the essential framework, the foundation for secure, long-term emotional connection and resilience.
The system basically ignores security in favor of chasing novelty.
So once they've successfully pathologized the norm, painted monogamy as inherently flawed.
Then they have to justify their alternative, right, vigorously.
Exactly. Which takes us to the logical arguments they use for expansion for polyamory, which they insist is the superior, more evolved path.
Okay, so what's the first justification?
We first looked at what they call functional expansiveness.
Functional expansiveness, okay.
The argument here is actually quite simple on the surface. Polyamory is factually more expansive because it offers a larger retinue of options.
Meaning more partners.
Yeah. By having multiple partners, your social field is quantitatively bigger, and therefore, they conclude, your life is inherently richer and more fulfilling.
Wait a minute, that just sounds like saying more is more.
That is the absolute definition of a tautology. It's a circular argument dressed up as profound insight.
Saying more partners equals more connections. Well, yeah, mathematically, sure.
Of course. But it equates quantitative increase, just having a larger social circle or more sexual partners, with qualitative fulfillment.
And that is a massive intellectual and, frankly, spiritual leap that is just completely unsupported.
Totally unsupported by any real data, psychological or spiritual. They just assume that maximizing options automatically equals maximizing happiness.
But we know, even from basic decision science, that having too many options often leads to the opposite, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Decision fatigue, shallower connections because you're spread thin, reduced overall satisfaction because you're constantly comparing what you have to all the other options you didn't choose.
It creates this constant what if.
And that leads directly into the specific threat they leverage to convince people, particularly maybe those feeling stuck, to follow this path.
Which is?
The threat of option elimination.
What does that mean?
The system suggests that polyamory feels threatening to people only because it forces an option they had previously eliminated, namely sexual variety, back onto their personal decision tree.
So the idea is monogamy is just an excuse to not face your desire for variety.
Essentially, yes. By eliminating the excuse for unlived desires, they claim you are somehow forced into true liberation. Confronting everything becomes the path.
So their version of freedom is basically this mandatory forced confrontation with every single desire you've ever felt.
Pretty much, with the justification that eliminating the excuses for repression is the same as actually eliminating repression itself.
It frames the commitment someone might make to monogamy not as, say, a positive choice of devotion or focus.
No, it frames it as an excuse, a way to avoid hard internal work.
Wow, that sounds less like freedom and more like mandatory, exhausting internal conflict.
Doesn't it? You're basically forced to maximize your desire sets, constantly evaluate them.
Which, let's be honest, conveniently serves to justify a specific, hypersexualized lifestyle choice.
Exactly. All under the banner of high vibration spirituality and personal growth.
Okay, so this brings us right to the core of the cage, doesn't it? How the system moves from these philosophical ideas to specific behavioral commands.
Yes. And crucially, how it wraps these commands in spiritual language to manipulate really basic human emotions. This is where things get particularly insidious.
And where we encounter the concept of the archetypal harem.
The archetypal harem, exactly. The system justifies polyamory through something it calls archetypal complementarity.
Okay, break that down. Complementarity.
The core idea is that no single female partner can possibly embody the fullness of all the feminine archetypes.
Right. Like one person can't be everything.
Exactly. Therefore, for the practitioner, and let's be clear, this is almost always framed from the male perspective to achieve full spiritual integration.
He needs multiple partners.
He needs to experience multiple complementary feminine archetypes simultaneously. Different women embodying, say, the warrior queen and the nurturing goddess and the wild child all at the same time.
Wow. What's fascinating there is just the sheer reductionism, isn't it?
It's pure objectification, just cloaked in this spiritual archetypal language.
It reduces complex autonomous partners, people, into functional roles.
Functional archetypal roles designed purely for the gurus or the male practitioners' fulfillment and development. Each partner serves a specific pre-assigned purpose in his egoic growth.
That feels deeply problematic.
It is. We immediately recognize this as the archetypal harem deception, and it's not new, not at all.
You see echoes of this historically.
Oh, throughout history, from Chinese emperors with their courts to figures like King Solomon, where political or spiritual status was explicitly used to justify accumulating multiple women.
All centered around one man's experience and needs.
Precisely. It's ultimately an exercise in consumption, not connection. If you're a partner in the system, you're not really seen as a whole person.
You're a piece of the puzzle.
A piece meant to complete the man at the center, is Talia.
And this fixation on these defined archetypes, it goes beyond just sexuality, right?
It does. The system uses it to diagnose broader societal unease. It claims that a lot of modern discontent stems from a fundamental confusion between biological sex and these predetermined archetypal roles like king or queen.
So it offers this seemingly deep explanation.
But it's ultimately circular, isn't it? The reason you're unhappy is because you haven't properly sorted yourself into the right archetypal box that we define.
Right. It provides the problem and the solution simultaneously.
But the most insidious command structure, the one that really enables the whole polyamorous framework, targets the most protective human emotion, jealousy.
Yes. Because if you're going to command people to engage in these expansive multi-partner relationships,
you have to neutralize the natural instinct to protect the pair bond first. You have to dismantle that emotional response.
So how do they define jealousy?
The decree here is absolute and quite severe. Jealousy is defined not as, say, a feeling to be understood or processed. No, it's defined as a primordial negative emotion, a vice, something that must be overcome and violently alchemized.
Violently alchemized.
Yeah.
Wow. So if you feel jealousy, you are.
You are morally, spiritually, and even evolutionarily inferior, according to this system. Feeling it is a sign of failure.
That's a devastating tactic, isn't it?
It really is. It pathologizes a near-universal human emotion, one that's vital to human attachment and security.
We know from evolutionary psychology, for instance, jealousy isn't just random noise.
Exactly. Evolutionary psychology views it as fundamentally adaptive. It's likely a mechanism that evolved to protect investment in the pair bond, ensuring offspring survival. It's a protective instinct.
It serves a function.
A crucial one. And furthermore, attachment theory. It views jealousy very differently, too. Not as a moral failing,
but as a signal, right?
A crucial signal, a flare going up indicating activated abandonment fears or unmet needs for security within the relationship.
So the healthy, mature approach would be?
To address the underlying insecurity, to communicate the need, to work on strengthening the bond, not to just declare the signal itself immoral and try to eradicate it.
But by defining jealousy as this fundamental vice,
the system forces the individual to ignore vital internal information. They're literally taught to bypass their deepest protective instincts, all in the name of enlightenment.
It's like cutting the wire to your own smoke detector because the alarm is annoying.
That's a great analogy. But the system goes even further than just declaring jealousy a vice. It issues the ultimate command, the definitive test of true spiritual refinement,
which they call
the crucible of blessing.
The crucible of blessing. Sounds intense.
It is. This command directs the practitioner, usually the one feeling jealous, to actively bless their partner's graphic sexual experiences with other people.
Bless them.
Bless them. And perhaps most jarringly, to view their partner's other lover not as a rival, but as a brother or sister.
Wow. That's hard to even process.
This is pure, unadulterated emotional manipulation. We call this the alchemical lie in action.
It's a spiritualized command for what's essentially emotional bypassing.
Total bypassing. The system commands the complete deconstruction of natural protective instincts, all under the guise of spiritual advancement. The individual is forced, commanded, to view something causing immense pain and threat to their security as a blessing, as a sign of growth.
Just stop and genuinely consider the emotional gymnastics required to sustain that belief.
Right. To feel the raw pain of potential abandonment, the insecurity, the hurt, and then actively override it with this coerced sense of blessing.
It sounds utterly exhausting, less like freedom, more like a full-time emotional job just trying not to feel natural human pain.
Exactly. And what happens if you fail? If you can't do it? If you feel the protective instinct, the hurt, the fear, the normal human response?
Then the system implies it's your fault.
Precisely. It implies that you lack the spiritual refinement, the inner strength to alchemize the emotion properly.
So you're forced to internalize the failure. The blame rests on your own supposed lack of spiritual development.
Not on the, frankly, impossible, emotionally damaging standard the system imposes. It's a perfect trap.
Okay, let's shift slightly now to the framework of power within the system. Specifically, how they redefine masculinity to fit this model. This is the rebranded patriarch, right?
Yes, the rebranded patriarch. The system attempts to update or maybe just repaint its definition of masculinity, what they often call the divine masculine.
And how do they define that?
It's fundamentally defined as a penetrative force, a force used to gather resources, to act upon the world. But
There's a caveat.
there's a crucial caveat added, likely to soften the edges. It must be feeling, not extractive.
Okay, my immediate analytical question is, does adding the word feeling actually change the core concept if it's still fundamentally defined as penetrative and resource gathering?
That's the exact question. If the fundamental definition remains centered on being a penetrative force that acts upon the world, rather than, say, with it,
Then the structure of power hasn't really changed, has it?
it seems like it's just been given a soft self-help coating. It feels like rebranding the old patriarchy with better, more palatable vocabulary.
The core concept of power remains fixed on outward force, on acquisition.
Which, as you know, feminist theory has long critiqued as the extractive paradigm, because it inherently establishes dominance rather than mutuality.
And again, countersystems offer much more sophisticated models of power, don't they?
Absolutely. Taoism, for instance, offers a completely different path. Yang, or masculine power, isn't about forceful penetration. It's achieved through harmony with and even deference to yin, the feminine principle.
So the highest expression of strength in that model is flexibility, integration, balance.
Not just perpetual extraction or penetration. It seems like the system we're dissecting just takes the old cage of patriarchal power dynamics.
And replaces the rusty bars with shiny new ones, forged in the language of feeling.
Exactly. The structure remains fundamentally unchanged.
Okay, so we've seen what the system commands, what it demands emotionally and behaviorally. Now we need to analyze its ultimate strategy. How does it defend itself?
Right. How does it handle the inevitable failures, the pain, the criticism that arises when people try to live up to these impossible standards?
This is the end game, really, creating the self-sealing architecture that rejects all external critique and maintains the gurus, the leaders, total authority.
And we see this defense mechanism kick in right away when critics suggest that the guru's own shared vulnerabilities might be, fake, performative.
How does the system counter that?
The guru immediately asserts a kind of special, almost sacred status. He dismisses those claims outright, insisting his sharing is choiceless, it's real.
Like he can't help but be vulnerable because his spiritual path compels it.
Exactly. And this immediately sets up a moral framework, a dichotomy.
How so?
Critics are automatically categorized as extractive or parasitic. They're just trying to take down something pure.
While his sharing, conversely, is deemed generative, offering true healing to the community.
By defining the terms of the conversation this way, he establishes this clear moral hierarchy. External skepticism automatically places the critic in the category of moral failure.
So you're not merely disagreeing with his ideas.
No, you're attacking the purity of the gift itself. It shuts down legitimate critique by framing it as morally suspect.
That's clever.
Yeah.
But what about more intellectual criticism? critiques of the actual language and concepts used.
Ah, well, that's where they deploy perhaps their most effective defense mechanism against intellectual challenges, what they use to disqualify outside opinions entirely.
Which is?
The blind spot. Criticism of the spiritualized language itself, terms like alchemized, vibration, penetrative force, archetype.
Yeah, the jargon.
Exactly. That criticism is dismissed entirely, out of hand, as coming from people who lack direct experience.
Ah, the classic, you wouldn't understand unless you're in it argument.
Precisely. And that right there is the instant creation of epistemic closure. It's an intellectual fortress.
Explain epistemic closure a bit more.
Epistemic closure basically means the belief system is structured in such a way that it automatically invalidates any evidence or argument that could potentially falsify it.
So, if you haven't bought into the system, if you haven't paid the money, done the specific rituals, used the prescribed psychedelics maybe,
Then you are automatically disqualified from having a valid opinion. You literally cannot speak the language, so you are deemed incapable of critiquing the map.
it's a perfect defense loop, isn't it?
Mm.
Creates this hermetically sealed intellectual environment where only internal validation, only agreement from within the system actually counts.
Exactly. No outside perspective can ever penetrate it. But perhaps the most audacious, the most, frankly, bold defense strategy is the financial shield.
The financial shield, you mean using money as a defense?
Yes.
Yes.
Specifically, the argument that massive financial losses somehow prove the guru's purity of intention.
How does that work?
The guru specifically points to huge financial losses, citing, for example, a purported $4 million loss on initiatives like Fit for Service, as irrefutable evidence that he is not extractive, that he isn't driven by profit. The logic is deceptively simple. I lost a ton of money, therefore I must be morally pure.
That sounds like a complete non sequitur.
It's a textbook case of what we call moral misdirection. Poor business acumen, or maybe just risky ventures that didn't pan out, are suddenly presented as proof of moral superiority.
We call this the lost leader of liberation deception.
Exactly, the lost leader of liberation. Our cross-contextual analysis, looking at this through, say, a Marxist lens,
Suggests these aren't really failures at all.
suggests they function as an extremely expensive investment, an investment in cultural capital and brand credibility.
So the losses are essentially high-cost marketing.
Precisely. When you appear willing to sacrifice millions of dollars for your mission, it proves your dedication to the path. It generates immense brand loyalty and trust.
Which then pays dividends later, presumably, in high-ticket courses, exclusive events, unquestioned authority.
Exactly. It builds a kind of debt of belief in the followers. And this connects to classic anthropological work, too.
Boy, Marcel Mauss.
Yes, Marcel Mauss's seminal work, The Gift. It fundamentally challenges the very idea of a pure gift, something given with absolutely no expectation of return.
Mauss showed that even seemingly non-transactional generosity, a gift, always creates social bonds and future obligations, right?
Always. Nothing is ever truly free in that social sense. So the gift of a $4 million loss isn't just a loss. It's a massive investment in authority that implicitly demands loyalty and belief in return.
You feel like you owe the guru your belief because of his apparent sacrifice.
And all these layers of defense, the moral framing, the epistemic closure, the financial shield, they all culminate in the final unassailable fortress, the ultimate defense,
Which is?
the principle of the solipsistic judge.
Solipsistic, meaning only the self exists or can be known.
Essentially, yes. It's articulated through a statement often quoted by the guru, something we've called the Bodie Miller insulation principle, after the skier who supposedly said something similar.
What's the gist of it?
It states, roughly, people are going to pump your tires when you don't deserve it, and people are going to criticize you when you don't deserve it. The only judge is oneself.
Wow. The deception there is incredibly clear and powerful.
It's what we call the self-judgment shield. And it's a common tool, a very effective one, used by charismatic leaders everywhere.
To invalidate all external ethical standards.
Completely. Whether those standards come from family, friends, critics, even legal systems sometimes, if the only valid judge is oneself.
Then accountability becomes structurally impossible.
Exactly. It creates a completely narcissistic system. The guru becomes the sole arbiter of his own morality, his own success, his own true.
He doesn't just reject the constraints of society. He rejects the very concept of an objective or even shared ethical framework.
The only thing that matters is the self's perception of its own purity. A perception that, as we've seen, is carefully manufactured and fiercely defended by the system itself.
Okay, so we've broken down the mechanics, the commands, the defenses. Now let's bring in the heavy hitters, as you said. Philosophy, psychology.
Right. Let's show how this system, despite its modern branding, is actually neither new nor particularly enlightened. It's really a rehash of ancient philosophical errors and psychological misunderstandings.
Package for a new audience. Where do we start?
We can start by challenging that core concept again, authentic freedom, but this time through the powerful lens of Eastern thought, specifically Buddhism.
Okay, how does Buddhism view this kind of freedom?
Well, the sisters' definition of freedom, this constant pursuit and maximizing of desire, living out every impulse. In Buddhist terms, that's simply tanha.
Tanha, which means desire.
It's often translated simply as desire, but it's more accurately clinging or grasping, deeply rooted in the ego's needs. And in Buddhism, tanha is universally identified as the root cause of dukkha.
Dukkha meaning suffering.
Suffering, dissatisfaction, stress, yes. True liberation in Buddhism, nirvana, isn't about indulging the ego's endless cravings, wandering deeper into the labyrinth of one's own desires, as the system might put it.
It's the exact opposite, isn't it?
The exact opposite. It's release from that clinging, from that grasping. So the guru, in effect, is selling a map deeper into suffering while promising it's the way out.
This modern path of expansion is actually a guaranteed route back into the cycle of stress, always wanting more, always comparing, never truly satisfied.
Precisely. And you don't even need to look east. Western philosophy offers the exact same warning. Think about Stoicism.
Right. Stoics would have a field day with this idea of freedom as license.
They'd argue vehemently against the license of passions that this guru promotes. True freedom for the Stoics is ataraxia.
Inner tranquility, being undisturbed.
Yes, and that's found in virtue, self-control, reason, and accepting your role within the larger cosmos, including your social role, not in the quantitative expansion of options or experiences.
The Stoics would likely laugh at the idea that fulfillment lies in, say, maximizing your list of sexual partners, or constantly chasing new external validation.
Absolutely. The relentless pursuit of more options, trying to embody every single archetype, that's the very antithesis of Stoic tranquility. For the Stoic, freedom lies in mastering your internal response.
Whereas this guru demands you relinquish that internal control to the endless pursuit of external stimuli.
Exactly. Now, turning back to psychology, we absolutely have to revisit the pathologizing of emotion, especially jealousy.
Because when the system commands you to just eradicate this feeling,
It flies directly in the face of everything we understand about human attachment and pair bonding. Attachment theory provides such a crucial counterpoint here.
remind us how attachment theory sees jealousy.
It teaches us that jealousy isn't some moral failing or sign of weakness. It's usually a signal of activated attachment fears, particularly the fear of abandonment or the loss of a valued connection or investment.
So the healthy response in a secure relationship
Is to address the underlying insecurity, communicate the need for reassurance, work together to strengthen the security of the attachment bond itself, not just try to willpower the signal away.
So when you try to force yourself, through sheer will or spiritual jargon, to bless the pain of your partner's sexual engagement with someone else,
You're fundamentally engaging in what psychologists might call love avoidance, or certainly extreme emotional suppression. You're sacrificing genuine security for the sake of conforming to an external, impossible spiritual ideal.
and that doesn't lead to higher spirituality, does it?
It leads to repressed trauma, chronic anxiety, and deeply insecure attachment patterns. It damages the individual and the relationship.
And evolutionary psychology offers an even starker contrast, right?
Oh, much starker. It frames jealousy not just as a signal, but as an adaptive mechanism, something fundamentally designed through evolution to protect investment in the pair bond.
Which historically ensured things like resource sharing, protection, child survival.
Exactly. The sheer emotional intensity of that crucible of blessing command is so jarring precisely because it commands the deconstruction of fundamental protective instincts. Instincts vital to human pair bonding for millennia.
It's literally asking the individual to override their own evolutionary software using spiritual dogma.
That's a perfect way to put it. Let's also briefly return to that definition of masculinity, the penetrative force paradigm.
Yeah, the feeling penetrative force.
Right. The guru's insistence on this definition, even with the feeling add-on, feels so reductive and, frankly, outdated.
We already mentioned Taoism.
Which shows that true yang power, true masculine strength in that tradition, is achieved through harmony and balance with yin, not dominance over it. The highest expression is integration, flexibility.
Not just perpetual extraction or assertion.
Exactly. And even within Western psychology, think about Jungian theory. The goal of the mature masculine, the whole process of individuation for men,
Was about integrating the inner feminine, the anima?
Precisely. Not about seeking completion by accumulating multiple external women to fulfill separate archetypal roles that you project onto them.
So the system presents an external solution. More partners fulfilling archetypes for what Jung would see as an internal integration problem.
Which is almost always a sign of spiritual bypassing, trying to fix an inner lack with outer accumulation.
Okay, finally, let's synthesize the financial and spiritual aspects. This idea of the commodified sadhana.
Yes, the commodified sadhana. First, maybe a quick definition reminder. Sadhana.
Is a term from Hindu and Buddhist traditions.
Right. It refers to daily spiritual practice. The disciplined, often ascetic path towards a goal of liberation or enlightenment. It's traditionally internal, focused on things like meditation, self-discipline, study.
Okay, so how does this system commodify that?
The guru system essentially takes this ancient concept, repackages it, and then sells it back to you. Your path, your sadhana, is achieved by following their complex, often expensive roadmap.
Moving from, say, lower risk, maybe branded practice,
Like specific breathwork techniques or proprietary dance methods.
up towards the higher risk, perhaps higher status territory of regulated or even experimental psychedelics, often facilitated within their paid containers.
Exactly. This entire structure, when you step back, looks remarkably like the old Puritan work ethic, just repackaged and spiritualized.
Now so.
Your liberation isn't found freely within, through simple presence or insight. It has to be earned. Earned through meticulously following the guru's complex, monetized regimen. You work the program, you pay the fees, you climb the ladder.
It turns spiritual practice into a form of achievement-based consumerism.
Precisely. And this brings us really to the ultimate deception underlying this entire system. The core lie.
What is it?
The core lie is this. Liberation requires deconstructing all external constraints, tradition, monogamy, societal norms, everything. But then, immediately, the system provides a self-appointed prophet, the guru.
To guide the reconstruction.
Yeah.
To tell you how to rebuild your life according to his rules.
Exactly. It replaces the old cages, the cages of tradition, duty, maybe repressive religion that people are trying to escape.
With a new, shiny, arguably more insidious prison.
Yes. A prison constructed from one's own amplified, unconstrained desires, where the only map, the only source of truth, the only validation
Is sold, literally or figuratively, by the man who built the walls.
You're convinced you're free because you chose this particular lock, this particular system, but the prophet still holds the only key. He defines what freedom looks like within his system. #ATRO.
So, to summarize, this system presents itself as liberating, but it looks like a remarkably self-contained, self-justifying architecture.
It pathologizes normal, protective human emotions like jealousy. It spiritualizes what often look like self-serving appetites, dressing them up in the language of higher archetypal purpose.
It cleverly monetizes the healing journey through these branded complex paths, the commodified sadhana.
And most importantly, it insulates itself from all external critique, using tactics like dismissing critics as lacking experience, using financial losses as proof of purity, and ultimately relying on that narcissistic shield of self-judgment being the only judge.
My final thought really comes back to that ultimate deception we identified. This system uses the most potent language available, the language of freedom, sovereignty, authenticity.
To actually forge newer, shinier chains. It doesn't truly free the individual, it seems to enslave them, not to society this time, but to the self-appointed prophet who controls the definition of enlightenment within their closed loop.
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question for you.
So now you've seen the machinery. Where is the one spiritual or self-help idea in your own life that you're going to put on the chopping block first?
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative, deconstruct the dogma, see the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical.
Thank you for joining us.